right, guys, hello and welcome. We are here Saturday morning, episode 61. We're going to laugh today. We're going to talk entertainment, laughs, giggles, everything and above with Eric Johnston.
Hey, I'm here. I feel like Mark Wahlberg. I feel like I got up early on a Saturday. I got showered, dressed. I feel like I can take over the world. I'm actually up pretty early these days. I mean, when I was a single stand-up touring stand-up comic, I would go to bed at like 3, 4, 5 and wake up at 10, 11, 12. Now that I'm married, I'm still touring. But by like, I don't know, 10:30, I'm like, I'm up at 8 every day and stuff. So I'm glad you got me up here early on a Saturday, drove out to Ancaster. I feel like I could take over the world.
Ready to go, man.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in today. Can't wait to hear Eric's story. He brought me a fucking awesome book, Running with the Bull. So we're going to get into that. A little bit of just the logo, the brand in itself is awesome. So can't wait to get into that today. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Again, really happy it's not just my mom. If you can like, share, post, we're going to share all about Eric and his story today. So let's get into it. We always start the show off now. We kind of made a transition at episode 50. What was your first paid job?
Oh, good question. In stand-up comedy, we were talking about this before, we went on the air this morning. There's kind of a step, like, with plumbing, you become an apprentice and then you get your ticket and whatever. There's kind of steps like that in comedy where you start doing comedy, you start on open mics or an open mic night or an amateur night at a comedy club. And you do that for years. I was joking with you. Some guys do that for their entire career. They're just open mic comics and that's fine. I mean, but eventually about 5 years in, I thought I feel like I've got enough of an act that I can truly go on the road and perform at colleges and universities and other shows and other, breweries and whatever. I think the first time I ever got paid. Now, when you're an open mic comic, sometimes the promoter, if he's having a good night, will be like, hey, I made some money off the door. Everyone gets $20 for gas if you drove in from somewhere. Really? And I remember being like, $20 for gas? Oh, my God. Or sometimes the venue would come over and you go, I thought you were really funny. You want some chicken wings? And you'd be like, yes, oh my God, guys, I'm a pro now. I got paid in chicken wings. I read a joke, that I used to get paid in chicken wings. And then eventually I signed a endorsement deal with Wings Up. And I started getting paid in money in chicken wings many years later, which was very funny. But, I think the first time someone wrote me a check or handed me an envelope full of cash, I performed at Fanshawe College in London. And we did, in a day, we did Fanshawe and we did Western in a day. And I was out with two comics who are still working today and doing very well, Alex Pavone and Frankie Tricks, a.k.a. just Tricks. And he lives in Vegas now. Alex lives in New York City. And the three of us went out and did a college. We did an afternooner, which is, and now I would never do. It's like a nooner at a lunch hour at Western. Kids are there ordering pitas. And they're like, so we're going to do a live stand-up comedy show. Like that, the Students Associations always think it's a good idea. And it's never a good idea. So the one in the afternoon sucked. It was the worst. But then we went to Fanshawe and I was the host and I hosted for Tricks. And I did like 10, 15 minutes off the top, maybe 5, whatever. It doesn't matter. I didn't have any good material at the time. I was only about 2 years in. And at the end of the night, Tricks handed me like $250. Wow. And I was like, whoa, this is I'm buying a house, I'm buying a car, we're going to Cabo. Yeah. And then you just kind of become an open micer. It wasn't until I was maybe about 7 years in and I started touring where I started making, a couple $100 at a time. Now I'm in my 14th year and, I'm on a $1,500 guarantee to appear versus 80% of the door. So how many tickets you sell, I get 80% of that. But no matter what happens, I get $1,500. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I got to be asking for more money for these things. Like sometimes, whatever. Sometimes it's a great night. You sell 400 tickets and you're taking 80% of the door on a $30 ticket. You're walking out with $5-6 grand for an hour's work. But it's not just an hour's work. It's 14 years of work. That's, you've seen the meme online. You're not paying me for the time that I'm spending doing this job. You're paying for the time it took me to get here to this point to be able to do this job in an hour. And it's business, grows, as obviously. I mean, look around, right? And when you start from chicken wings, anything after that is just feels amazing. It feels like free money. It's great. It's really cool.
That's awesome, man. And it's so interesting, I find, learning about different career paths.
Yeah.
And comedy is not something I'd say as a career path because we were getting in trouble for it when we were younger.
Yeah. Well, I always say when we were kids, everybody was funny. All your friends were funny. Everyone in school was funny. But then eventually everyone just went out and got jobs.
Yeah.
And I tried to work. I really did try. Actually, I drove by it on the way here. I used to sell gym memberships at Good Life Fitness, Wilson West, right here. I just drove by it.
Come on.
And I was really good at it. I worked there for 2 months. In the first 2 weeks, I became their number one salesman. I sold 14 memberships in my first week, which in Good Life standards, the guy I replaced, it took him 2 months to sell one membership. And I sold 14 in my first week because being a comic, being an entertainer, I started in theater and dance and musical theater and film and television. I just knew how to talk to people. So it was like natural sales. I would just come in, someone would talk, I'd shoot the shit with them. We'd walk around, I'd make them laugh, and I go, okay, let's get you signed up for a gym membership and personal training. And they're like, okay. And they just walk over. So my boss would be like, who is this kid? Like, where did he come from? And then, I have a problem with structure and authority and stuff like that. And there was a guy named Chris Keith, who I love. I still talk to him all the time. He was my manager there. And I remember I was late for a staff meeting, or once I got caught on the Red Hill or on the Link, and I was late getting there, and they locked the door to my office. And I I said, they made me wait out because they were having a staff meeting in my sales office, and they locked the door and wouldn't let me in as like a way to say, like, don't be late for sales meetings. And he came out, he's like, Eric, can I talk to you in my office? And I went, yeah, can I talk to you in your office for a sec? And I just walked in and I just quit. I just couldn't. My young 22-year-old ego just couldn't deal with authority. I look at it now as a 34-year-old man going like, wow, what a little dick I was. But I really, tried. I bartended. I was in retail. I was in sales. I wrote for a magazine for a bit. And all those kind of, pieces kind of accented my work that I do now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so interesting that the sales paths. I've never really had I haven't had a real job. I haven't had a civilian job since 2015. And
wow.
Yeah.
Good for you, man.
And I have a house. So
yeah,
it's coming together.
That's incredible. So tell us about how you, again, charismatic, you confident behind the mic, hosting events, right? Like, how did you get started in comedy? And what was that moment where you're like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm going.
Yeah, I can pinpoint the exact moment when stand-up took over my life. And so backstory. So I just wrote a book about it. We can talk more about it towards the end. My father and grandfather were both Canadian Hall of Fame professional wrestlers. My father was Bullwhip Johnston. My grandfather was the Bull Johnson. I'm just Eric. But, I grew up, I was basically born into the circus. Like, my dad was wrestling every weekend somewhere in the world. And when he was in Hamilton or in Toronto, Niagara, and Buffalo and stuff, I would go to all the matches. And I became friends with all these professional wrestlers, like my dad's buddies, like Macho Man Randy Savage and The Big Show. And I had the Bushwhackers swimming in my pool when I was a kid. And my dad was best friends with a Hamiltonian, legendary, infamous Hamiltonian by the name of Johnny Canine. Johnny Canine was a professional wrestler, but also a career criminal. The guy blew up a police station in Sudbury, Ontario. He went to the Kingston Penitentiary. He got put in jail in Vancouver for conspiracy to commit murder and traffic cocaine. This guy was nuts. He was the head of the Satan Choice motorcycle gang. But he was also a professional wrestler. So he was at my house all the time, swimming in my pool, shooting the shit with my dad. We'd go in the car together. We'd drive to Buffalo. Like, I grew up in this kind of crazy space, right? So Then, as a kid, I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I wanted to be an entertainer myself, but I couldn't get into professional wrestling because I'm a child. So I got into competitive dance, which is so funny. My dad's a professional wrestler, and I'm doing tap jazz and ballet. But I knew it was a stage. I just had to get on the stage under the lights and feel the energy. So I did that for 7 years. I danced all around Ontario, tap, jazz, ballet, music theater, hip hop, swing dance, all kinds of stuff. From there, I transitioned from musical theater to regular theater. I did 4 years. I did 16 plays in 4 years, which was, a play every 3 months, basically. And
what goes into that? Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Like, because I recently went to a play, and it was incredible as an adult to identify the back end.
Yeah.
Like how choreographed it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, listen, I was in high school at the time. This is from grade 9 to grade 12. I did 4 plays a year for 4 years. Was that 4, 8, 12, 16? That makes sense. I'm not a mathematician, but anyway, they did 4 plays a year. I would be in school from whatever school starts, 8:15 to 2:45 or 2:55 or whatever it was at Cardinal Newman. And then I would immediately go into the theater and be there from 3 to 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I would be rehearsing and running lines and doing all the choreography, the dance numbers, the singing numbers. I was in musicals. I was in dramatic plays. I was in comedic plays. And it's all about just repetition, just showing up. Okay, let's run the scene. Let's do it again, guys. Okay. Basically, what you end up doing is you end up stacking all of the scenes and rehearsing them just one at a time, and then you start piecing them all together. So, the start of the play, you rehearse that 50 times until you got that. Then you move on to the next piece. You rehearse that 50 times. And then towards the end, you do this, the first one and the second one 100 times. Then you go on to the third one, and you just keep stacking it and building the kind of memory, which is funny because that's how I build comedy material too. I'll start with a bit and then stack it into another bit. And then now I have an hour and 15 minutes of material that I do all over Canada.
And is that always the same material?
Yeah, it is. It's people always say, is it always the same? I go, the show is the show is the show. However, my show in Sudbury is different than my show in Windsor, which is different from my show in Saginaw, Michigan, which is different from my show in Halifax, which is different from my show in Vancouver. They're all the same words, but different energies, different local references, different, if it's a bunch of older people in the room, I'll do it for, I'll do all my boomer shit. If it's all teenagers and college students, I'll do all my dating and relationship stuff. And I got bits about Snapchat if there's a bunch of kids in the room. So you can kind of always change it, but the structure of the show is the same. I have an opening bit, I middle with a bunch of stuff, and then I have a merch pitch. And then after the merch pitch, I go into the closer, and the closer is like 15 minutes itself. Really? So if I'm just stacking all those together, I know where I'm going. But sometimes the order changes. Sometimes I do a little crowd. I don't do a ton of crowd work, like I'm sure you've seen online, guys like Matt Rife or guys like that, where they're into the crowd. I don't do that. I believe that it's a show. It's a rehearsed performance. Mm-hmm. The idea is you're trying to make it look like you're coming up on the spot. That's the magic of comedy. A comic is like a band, you know what I mean? A band goes on tour and plays the same songs every night. But, saying they're in Milwaukee and there's a lot of rock and roll people there, they'll do a little more solos, but it's still the same song. That's what you're doing with comedy. So I believe that, if you're just showing up and you're prepared, you can really do anything. Like if you're in a really good flow on stage, I could go up there and read the fucking phone book and it would be funny because I'm just in that space. The energy that they give is the energy I get back, and give back to them. So yeah.
Where do you, it's so interesting just to slow into that. Like I think about that all the time when I'm at a concert.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're doing the same fucking song
every night. Yeah.
And they're bringing it. And I guess that's where it comes from, that performance.
Yeah.
That energy that you bring. Because every time I see you, man, like it's kind of like go time. And I think that is entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah.
No one gives a shit about your problems when you're at work.
Exactly.
Because it's go time.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself like, what happens when you have a down crowd?
Yeah, it's tough. I say to my wife, like she watches a lot of my shows or my opening acts. The phrase is, I had to work for that one. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes I can like Saturday night. It was not easy because it was a very high pressure show. But last Saturday night, I performed at the Hamilton Place Theatre as part of the that Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame Festival in Hamilton.
No way.
It was 900 people out there. And I got introduced by Sean Majunder, who's one of my heroes. And it was just great. I did like 15 and a half, 16 minutes of material. And I walked out there and I was like, wow. You know what I mean? And they were like, wow. Like I did it, they matched. I went bigger, they came with me. I would slow it down, they would come with me. It was like just holding, a ball in my hands.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which sounds funny. But, that is so great when that happens. And when I'm in that free space, then I can riff more. Then I can have fun. I throw the notebook away. Not that I bring a notebook with me on stage, but you know what I mean? Figuratively, I throw it all away and just go out there and have fun. I hit my marks. I hit my punchlines. Thank you. Good night. I get the fuck off the stage. That is a great show. Where I had a show the other night at the El Macombo, which is a legendary Toronto venue. Michael Weckerly from Dragon's Den bought it, put like $60 million into this thing, state of the art, top of the line, stage, sound, lighting. And he approached me to ask me to do a comedy show there because he had heard of me and seen me. And I was like, oh my God, the guy from fucking Dragon's Den knows who I am. Anyway, so him and his daughter approached me, asked me to do a comedy show there. And it was good. I did the first one a couple months ago, sold like 90 of 100 tickets. So it was almost sold out. And then the other night I got there and there was like 40 people there. And they were kind of fucked off to begin with. Like I was like, how you guys doing tonight? And they're like, woo. Like they just didn't give a shit. So I can make a decision. Some comics do the wrong thing. And what some comics do is go, okay, you're shit. This is shit. I'm going to be shit. I'm going to fulfill my obligation. I'm going to get the fuck off the stage and get paid. A lot of comics do that. I don't. I'm like, all right, you're shit. I know I'm a professional. I know I can turn you. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to wake you guys the fuck up. So I like turned up my volume, turned up my energy. I'm moving around the stage. I'm pointing at people just for them to wake up and go, holy shit, I'm at a comedy show. But that's exhausting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that is working for it. I mean, sometimes I don't have to work for it at all. Like I'm about to tour Northern Ontario. I'm doing 6 shows up there. 5 of them are already sold out.
Really?
And I know, and the last one is Sunday night at a Legion, and they're all, we're buying last minute at the door, and that'll probably sell it too. And I know it's going to be not easy, but I'm going to feel very comfortable because these are places I've been. I built a fan base in Northern Ontario, so I'm walking in and just ready to rock, And to go back just to the question you asked before, what was the moment I knew that I was going to be a stand-up comic is I was doing film, I was doing theater, I was doing bit parts in TV shows, and then I moved out to Vancouver to go to the Vancouver Film School. Fast forward, I'm in the Vancouver Film School, having a great time of my life, and one of my classmates, Michael Moses, who's a working comic now and opens for me when he's in Ontario, he said, hey man, I'm going to go check out this open mic comedy night. And I said, sure, man, I love stand-up. I grew up watching stand-up Just for Laughs, Comedy Club 54. Like, this was my shit. But in Hamilton, there was no scene. There was no open mic scene in Hamilton. So I had no idea how to even get started. So I sit down in Vancouver. I'll never forget it. Byron Bertram was on stage. This was still a working comic today. And I sat down and I was watching him perform and I went, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Come on. What age were you in that?
20. I was 20. It was October 26th, 2010. I was 20 years old. I looked at the stage and went, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I walked up to the promoter at the end of the show, introduced myself, told him that I was already a comedian from Hamilton, which I had never done stand-up before. I lied. And I said, I'm just trying to get some stage time. And he said, okay, well, who do you know? And who have you worked with? And I knew a bunch of comics from being an actor in Toronto. So I said, I've worked with this guy, worked with this guy, worked with this guy. And he goes, okay, sounds like you've been around for a bit. You got 7 minutes next week So I had 7 days to come up with 7 minutes. And I did. On November 1st, 2010, I walked on stage. I did 7 minutes, and it wasn't that good. I didn't know. I knew what a joke sounded like, but I didn't at all have a voice. I was just, when you first start doing stand-up comedy, you're just basically doing an impression of the people you admire. So like I loved Dane Cook, and I loved other high energy guys. So I was just kind of doing an impression of them, not their material, but just like maybe their cadence and delivery. Anyways, I did well enough that the promoter went, okay, well, he's clearly confident. And because I had been doing theater and dance and stuff, I wasn't afraid to go on stage. Most comics, their first 5 years of their career is just trying to get comfortable being on stage, where I had been on stage since I was 6 years old. So I kind of fooled the guy that he went, okay, well, his material's not really good, but he's confident, which means he's probably just doing new material because this is an open mic. Okay. So I walked out of stage and went, good stuff. I can tell you're really confident. Come back next week. Come back next week. It was November 1st, 2010, and I have not stopped since. I do over 100 shows a year. Performed at the Laugh Factory in Chicago, headlined at the House of Blues in Chicago. I performed at the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard. I've opened for Russell Peters. I've opened for Sebastian Maniscalco, and I'm now on my 5th national headlining tour across Canada.
Congratulations.
Because I lied to a guy in 2010 and told him that I was already a stand-up comic. So yeah, that was the moment I knew.
That's incredible. And the journey is just nuts. I'm taking singing lessons right now.
Wow, congratulations.
And so I connect with you a lot on finding your voice.
Sure, literally finding your voice.
Finding your voice because, you're because when I've seen you perform, it's very much you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You're your own thing now.
Yeah.
But after you just said Dane Cook, I could see how that relationship with
Dane
the
Cook,
energy.
Sebastian Maniscalco. I get related to a lot of the high energy guys, which I'm okay with. Those are some of the top comics in the world, right? But I don't get that a lot anymore. I
think you're now you.
I'm just so clearly Eric Johnston that there's no other comparison. I'm just me, So that is special. I didn't know you were taking singing lessons. That's fun.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I'm like, because you're trying to match a song because I don't have my own songs, right? So now, okay, am I sounding like that? And I don't have my own voice.
Yeah.
Well, when I sing in the car to myself or whoever's gets the pleasure to do that, they get me, right? But it's weird to hear yourself. So
it's just that natural, like again, the finding your voice, but being comfortable. If people are uncomfortable, if they're nervous, if they're in their head, I always tell young comics, young actors, and really anybody, get out of your own way. You are enough. You showing up and being here is enough. You don't have to add anything. You don't have to add all this bullshit, all this. Most people, especially men, and I've been guilty of this in my life, when you're uncomfortable, you are insecure, so then you just turn up your kind of douchebagness. You turn up your ego and you can't hurt me because I'm the fucking man. And then you realize that does not serve you at all, because when you go out there and you think you're the man, the audience knows that you think you're the man, and the audience goes, fuck this guy. So it doesn't work. If you just settle and know that everything's going to be okay, whether you kill or bomb, it doesn't matter. You just move on to the next night. You get paid, hopefully, and that is what you do. This is your job. It's okay. No one talks about bombs. Like when someone bombs, people think that people are going to talk about it for the rest of their lives. They don't. They just move on to the next night. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. So, yeah.
It's great advice. That's great. Thank you for sharing. So, I could go a million different ways. It's funny. First thing Eric says is, we're not going to need those questions.
Go ahead. Reference the question.
No chance. No. Tell me about the book. Run with the Bull.
Yeah, man. So, again, my dad, professional wrestler, my grandfather, professional wrestler. These are obviously huge influences in my life. Both of them passed away. My grandfather passed away in 1988. I was born in 90, so I never even met my grandfather. And then my father passed away 9 days after my 13th birthday. So I became,
hear that.
Yeah, so I became a teenager at 13, and 9 days later I became a man, figuratively and literally. But, anyone who follows me and knows, my dad is a big part of my life. My dad is a big part of my brand. It's all bull related stuff. And that makes sense. But people go, oh, your dad was Bullwhip. Oh, that's why Run with the Bull, the Undeniable comedy tour, the Untouchable comedy tour. I've embraced them as a brand. When my dad was quite literally, as he was dying, I told him that I was going to keep his name alive. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job of that. And I always say, I wrote it in the book and I say it in interviews often is, my dad never made it in his lifetime, but he'll make it in mine.
Nice.
Which is, I've made a promise to represent my family, my lineage and all that kind of stuff everywhere I go. So fast forward, I was trying to make a documentary. The documentary was called Becoming Bullwhip. And the idea of the documentary is 33-year-old successful stand-up comic says it's finally time to follow in his family footsteps and become a professional wrestler and go out and train like no bullshit, like actually train to become a professional wrestler, work on a match, wrestle a match in Hamilton, film the whole thing. We learn stuff, we cry, we laugh, whatever. I pitched this around Netflix, Amazon Prime, CBC, and all roads led to no for many reasons, and none of the reasons were my fault. It was just like, well, budgets, and we don't want to compete with this wrestling show. And actually, the funniest one was from Netflix, and Netflix said, we love Eric, and we love this story, and we are aware of him and his career. Unfortunately, Eric is not famous enough to have his own show on Netflix. And my production partner went, so what are we going to do? And then he went, just tell Eric to go get famous. And I went, okay, I'll just go get famous then, which was funny and while being absolutely heartbreaking at the same time. I'm working on it, so I'll come back to Netflix in a couple years. But anyways, fast forward.
Do it at 35.
Yeah, exactly. So the older I get, the funnier the documentary is going to be. But anyways, so Greg Oliver is a legendary Canadian sports writer. He's written 20 books, wrestling, hockey, baseball, everything. He knows me. He was at my dad's funeral. He knew my grandfather. He was aware of my dad's career. And my dad was actually the first person to ever let him behind the curtain so he could do writing for a wrestling magazine. So Greg Oliver approached me and said, listen, I know so much about your grandfather. I know so much about your dad. I followed them both and loved them both. And now I'm watching your career absolutely skyrocket. You're selling out everywhere you go. I think now is a perfect time to write a book. And I went, okay. So that's what we did. For the last 18 months, he went out. Greg Oliver, and he had an assistant and co-author by the name of Joe Casharo. What they did is they went out and interviewed all these old wrestlers, all my dad's friends, all my family, my mom, my sister, my uncles, my dad's wrestling friends. He sourced all these old wrestling magazines and clippings and articles and other wrestling books that mentioned my dad, and he pieced it all together. So it's unlike a book I've ever seen before. It's actually very interesting. Every chapter is broken up into two sections because Greg Oliver and Joe Casharo, they went out and they interviewed everyone and handled the who, what, where, when, why, how it happened, when it happened, who was there, who promoted it, who won, who lost, etc. And in what year it was and blah, 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 blah. And then the second half of every chapter, I write. And I write my experience with what that was like as a kid. So there's a whole article about Johnny Canine, who I mentioned before, about his career and his crimes and all that kind of stuff. And then I write the second half of the chapter, what it was like having Johnny Canine around the house as a kid. So it covers my grandfather's career, my father's career, and now my journey into show business and all my successes and, the next steps of my career. It's 270 pages. I put it on Amazon for sale. I self-published the book and it went for sale on Amazon on February 1st. On February 2nd, it was #1 in comedy, #1 in wrestling, #1 in sports humor. It was a #1 hot new release, #5 on movers and shakers, and it got to 71 on all books on Amazon in one day. And I went, holy shit, people care. Like, because when you're in business, you feel like you're just doing shit all the time. You're just always showing up and you're always trying to get your product across, trying to get your story across, trying to get your brand across. And you have these moments where you go, is anyone even watching? Does anyone even give a shit? And then something like this happens. And I'm like, oh my God, they are. They are watching. They do care. And it's sold all over. Books shipped to Milan, Italy, Germany, all over the United States. Hundreds of copies sold in the Hamilton, Toronto, Niagara area. Now I've printed 500 physical copies and I'm selling them at shows. And so people come up, can I get a book? I sign it. What's your name? Brad. To Brad. You're the best. Eric Johnston. And people are reading it. In the book, I think the reason why it's become so successful is I didn't shy away from anything in the book. Both my dad and grandfather both passed away of alcoholism. They both died of liver kidney failure. And I talk about mental health, addiction, losing a parent at a young age. There's a super sad chapter in the book, but it was probably the most important thing I've ever written in my life. The chapter is called The Cleanup Kid. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. The premise of the chapter is my dad, towards the end of his life, was really struggling with alcoholism. The doctors were basically like, if you drink, you will die, period. And so he would have these bouts of being sober. He'd go into rehab, detox centers. He'd come home. He'd be sober for a couple of weeks. Then he'd fall off the wagon. And every time he fell off the wagon, our house was a mess. There was fights, there was tears, everyone's sad, everyone's fighting, everyone's yelling. And so in the 90s, I used to get home from school at 3:30. And my mom would get home from work from the Bank of Montreal at 5. If I came home at 3:30 and my dad was wasted and he'd be passed out on the couch, I, at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, made it my personal mission to try to clean him up. So I'd try to get him up off the couch. Come on, Dad, you got to get in the shower. Mom's going to be home. You got to brush your teeth, whatever. I'd always try to clean up the empties and the fucking Mickey bottles and the whatever, and just trying to make everything okay so there wasn't a fight. And it didn't matter in the end. My mom knew my dad so well that if my dad even smelt alcohol, my mom would know. But I took it as my mission to try to save my dad's life. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about it in the book, man. And it was, again, the most, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the most therapeutic thing I've ever done. It was the most, cathartic thing I've ever done. I healed that inner child when I wrote that book. I wrote that chapter in the book and I healed that kid who was fucked up because his dad was fucked up, Mm-hmm. And, but that being said, there's a lot of funny in the book. It's hilarious. There's so many funny stories and touring stories and wrestling stories. My dad used to tour with a traveling van full of mini people or little people, midgets, mini wrestlers. And they would tour all over Canada together, and the stories they have together. Like, the book is both hilarious and absolutely heartbreaking. So that's the book. It's available on Amazon or available at all my upcoming shows. So there you go.
Very powerful. I lost my father 7 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I've resonated very much with that.
Yeah.
So
I've been there, man.
It's good to share, right? And I think a lot of people, you said you became a teenager and a man at the same time. And there's a statement that says you don't become a man until you lose your father. And, as living it, I think that is true.
Yeah. I just think I said this. I was on Bubba O'Neill's podcast yesterday. I've said it before on podcasts. When you were still relatively young when you lost your dad. It was 7 years ago, and I was super young, 13, and I wrote in the book, and I've said in interviews before, when you lose a parent at a young age, you spend the rest of your life seeking approval from someone you're never going to get it from. But that makes you an extremely hard worker. It makes you show up and work your ass off every day because you never get any actual, hey, I'm proud of you. You just think, I hope he's proud of me. So it makes you work so fucking hard. Look at your business. Look at my business. I'm not recommending your dad dies, but there are some perks. There are some perks. You can turn your life around and you can make some great things happen. And that's what it's all about, man. That is 100% what it's all about. And the reality is your mom, sister, brother, family, whatever, they are the ones who end up being the most proud of you. They are the ones because you represent that dad. I know I'm getting you all welled up here. It's all right, man.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. I never heard it like that. But I don't mind crying. That's good.
Yeah, of course, man. Hey, listen, as guys, we don't talk about this shit. We just fucking drink and we smoke, and we try not to talk about our feelings. And then I've become the kind of I always joke around and say I'm the president of the Dead Dad Club. I've been running this ship since 2003, man.
Yeah, it's young.
Yeah, but
No, it's good. I was talking to a guy the other day, lost his dad a year ago. I said it's my gift.
Yeah.
It was the gift I received to be able to talk about it, but anyways, got me choking here. That's a good one.
Man. Listen, and that's okay. I mean, I've been living in this space. I'm healed. I'm at peace with my dad being gone. I wake up every day and wish he was there. That is my, when people say it gets better, yeah, it gets better, but it never goes away. It never goes away. You just learn how to live with that thing. It's a piece of your life that you no longer have. And you, again, fill those voids. Guys like you and I, we've done it positively. I look around and I see the business and I see your trucks everywhere and I get excited. If I'm out on the road somewhere, like far, like I don't even know where I was, Sarnia or something, I saw one of your trucks. I was like, oh my God, this guy's killing it. You fill those voids in a positive way. And you and I, we both go out, we drink, we have fun, whatever. But at the end of the day, we want to create something to honor the men that came before us, because they set it up for us to live. My dad dying was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But after that, anything bad that happens, it's not that bad. Losing your dad 9 days of your 13th birthday is the worst thing that can ever happen to you. In my life, that's one of the worst things that can happen to you. It happened to me. But now when I'm in these business meetings or a deal's going to shit, or I get fucked over by some promoter or some guy, I filmed a comedy special and the guy never released the footage. All this stuff is bad, but it's not that bad. So you just have this look of life, like, it's okay, we'll get you next time. Life goes on. Yeah. And then it does. And then these things, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. So.
You're wise. Wise. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
I'm an owl and a bull.
It's good. Well, and I can't wait to read it. And so I love the, let's do it. I love the let's do it energy, and getting through the conceptualizing and sharing that story. And I think not enough people do it. Yeah. I mean, people, I'm repeating myself. I'm doing a lot of podcasts talking about this book, but this is new and a new audience. So I'll say again, a lot of people are afraid, and a lot of people disguise fear as practicality. They go, oh, I couldn't do that. It's not right if I did that. They're afraid to fail, really, is what they're trying to do. Yeah. But they'll say, when someone goes, oh, I thought you were doing that thing. Oh, I was going to do the thing, but then my wife's uncle's brother's cousin was in town, and he came by, and then I started talking to him, and then I know next week I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to do the thing. It's like, no, you're afraid to do the thing. Yeah. Just go and do it. The worst thing that you can hear is no. And then you just find a new way to hear the word yes. I used this analogy recently, and it's funny because it's true. I live in such a crazy life. I tour around and I do all these shows, and I basically live in the circus. There are very few things that make me nervous or excited anymore. Comedy still I get very excited about, but I'm not nervous anymore. I'm just ready to go out and deliver, right? But I love, one of my favorite things to do in the world is sneak into shit. I don't mean people's houses. I mean, like, example, you buy the cheapest ticket you can to a Toronto Maple Leaf game, top, and you try to sneak your way down to center ice, front row, stuff like that. I do all the time. Concert tickets, get the GA, and next thing you know, you're in the VIP section, always trying to sweet talk, always trying to sneak my way in. And like, because I'll give you an example. So we
this is a little tip for your listeners. It's called the vertigo trick. I'll explain it to you. Now, don't people don't do it at once or we're going to ruin it. What it is if you go to a hockey game,
Yep.
you buy the cheapest ticket you can. And you watch the first period from wherever, or the bar or whatever. Then, at the end of the first period, and I did this in Ottawa recently, you find someone in guest services. And you go, listen, I was gifted this ticket for the game today, and I'm having a great time. I go, but I'm so far up in the stadium, I'm feeling like vertigo. Like I feel like I'm like nauseous. I'm getting dizzy because I'm so high up. Is there anything you can do for me? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. And they will walk you to a better seat. And they will, I remember I was in Ottawa and the guy goes, hey, I'm sorry, man, the game's sold out, but we have a box. The Ottawa Senators, we own a box on center ice. Would you mind sitting in there? There's nobody in there. You'd just be you and your friend here, and you'd be in the box for the Ottawa Senators game. And he's like, we don't have a bartender in there right now because we weren't expecting anybody, but you'll have your own washroom. And if you need a drink, just in the hallway right there. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Now, people might think that's, a scummy thing to do. It's not, because the box was empty. I just asked for what I wanted in life. And it's really more of a lesson in life. The things you want in life, you go out and ask. The worst thing they can say is no. The worst thing that guy could have said was, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, but the game's sold out. Have a good afternoon. But he didn't. He said, let me see what I can do for you. And he walked me into a fucking box at center ice in the Ottawa Senators game. So that little story, like my wife and I, we went to the Queen's Plate this last 2 summers ago. And we had like regular seats. And I just walked up to the VIP section, like where they were handing out the badges. And I said, I didn't have a VIP pass. And I just walked up and said, hey, I'm picking up a VIP pass. And they go, what's your last name? I go, Johnston. I have a pretty general last name. She goes, yep, here you go. And just pulled out 2 VIP passes, just put them over our necks. Next thing you know, we're trackside VIP with the people who own the fucking horses at the Queen's Plate. And we're cheering each other on. Everyone's cheering, drinking, whatever. Just because I asked. I just acted like I should have been there. I acted like I had a VIP pass. Civilians, they can't compute that I would even make that up. You know what I mean? But it sounds like it's very Hamilton advice, like try to sneak into shit. But the point of the story is show up and ask for what you want, and no matter what, just try to get in the door. Mm-hmm. I said recently that, success is like an island, or success is like a house, and everyone's trying to get into that house. A lot of people try the front door, and if the front door is locked, they go, I guess I'm not getting in. And then they leave. They give up. I don't do that. I will get into that house somehow, that success home that I want to build for myself. Whether I come through the front door, the back door, the window, if I fucking parachute down and land through the chimney, I will make it into that room. You're not going to stop me. So people just know like that he's so driven, he's going to get in. The thing about success is that house gets bigger and further away from me every day because I want more, and I'm excited to get to the next level and whatever. What I'm learning to do as I get older and more mature, and now I'm married and have a home, I'm already so successful. I'm already the most successful comic probably in Hamilton and in Southern Ontario, and of all the things I've done and all the places I've been and the money I make living my dream. This is my dream, and I get to wake up and live it every single day. In that way, I'm already the most successful guy. I'm married to an amazing woman, and she's successful in her own business and real estate. In that way, I'm a success. 3 years ago, I was living at my mom's house. You know what I mean? 4 years ago, I was living at my mom's house. Now I live in a fucking mansion off Green Hill. And that was more timing, place, opportunity, money, getting married, my wife's income and whatever, good mortgage rate, whatever. But all those factors came together where now I live in a beautiful home in a town I love. I wake up every day and I get to live my dream. And that's what it's all about. Again, look around, look at what you've done. And it comes back to many factors: hard work, showing up, not being afraid of the word no, not being afraid to fail. And again, circling it back to our dead dads, having a point and a purpose and having something that you're motivated to represent, and having a void to fill. And that void is pride and thinking and wanting our dads to be proud of us. Yeah. That makes us both extremely hard workers.
And that's Eric Johnston. Yeah, the first time crying on the show.
Yeah.
And probably one of the best quotes I've ever heard. So thank you for that.
Of course, man.
So if you could give any advice
Sure.
to your younger self, what would it be?
I think to my younger self, is kind of the same advice that I've given to younger comics who are not myself, is just kind of keep showing up and being ready to shift and change or whatever. The book is a perfect example, not being afraid of change. I went out with the idea of doing a documentary. The documentary went to shit. The book came into my life. Now the book is an Amazon bestseller. And now the book will probably get turned into a documentary. So I found a way into that success room, but I went a completely different route than I imagined. And I know that when I first started comedy, I was 20 years old. And it's like you've seen those memes online where people are like, no one embarrasses me more than my Facebook statuses in 2010. You know what I mean? And I started doing comedy in 2010. I was scared and I was insecure and I had no experience and I was fucking as green as this floral wall behind me. And I overcompensated that fear with attitude and with being a fucking dickhead. And I don't regret the way I was because it really made me realize what I didn't want to be. And I was never rude to anyone or whatever. Jersey Shore was very popular at the time, 2010. And I feel like I was like the situation in like season 2 where like you can tell he's having fun and people love him, but he's also a little bit of a dick. I kind of fell into that kind of lifestyle. Plus I was single and running around being a fucking douchebag. And I just found that the advice that I give and what I say is you are enough. I didn't need to add that character. I didn't need to add that nobody fucks with Eric Johnston guy because that guy was just afraid. So he thought by being bigger, he'd be impenetrable. But the reality is once I softened my heart and once I became more comfortable and once I got more experience and once I kept showing up and doing more shows and just being open and honest and available and just like an empty vessel to learn and to experience, that's when my career took off. Because everyone went, I now believe this guy and I believe that he wants this more than anything. He's not saying much. My dad used to say to me as a kid all the time, and I never even really understood what it meant, but now I do. He would always say, let the work speak. Let the work speak. Work so hard that you can walk into a room and you don't even have to introduce yourself. Let the work speak. And I now have so much work that's speaking for me. I don't really have to say much at all anymore. I just show up, I do my shit, I leave. But before, that guy was, I'm the best, you gotta see me, come to my show, blah, 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 blah. That guy didn't work. He didn't work for me, and it didn't serve me. The second that I became the true version of me, which is the version that everyone gets now, once I really found my voice on stage and in life, everything took off. And, now I make a full-time living not as much as if I owned the plumbing company, but as much as if I was a really high-skilled plumber. And that came from just being my true self. Another thing that you learn is crabs in the bucket, man. The second, especially in this town, and I love Hamilton more than anything in this world, but the second in Hamilton, not necessarily just in Hamilton, but especially in show business, and this works for all show business, everybody wants you to do well, but nobody wants you to do better than them. So people will support you, the other comics and whatever, other entertainers, but they get very jealous. And a lot of comics get dragged down by that negativity. What? You're doing this? Come on. I thought we were all in this together. You're making money? Oh, who's this guy think he is making money? This is like that happens in the open mic scene. My advice to a younger me and a younger comic is just like, and I did this, thank God, is just like ignore it all and just keep showing up. Do your thing. Get paid if you're lucky as a young, comic.
Chicken wings.
And chicken wings. Eat your chicken wings and get the fuck out of there. Don't play into the politics. Don't play into the shit talking.
Yep.
Just focus on yourself and become a business. It is called show business for a reason. It's a business like how this is a business. And a lot of people, young comics and young entertainers, don't realize that. They think they're artists. And most artists I know are fucking broke. So be a business.
It's great advice, man.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap. That's a wrap for today, man.
I think we found our allotment of time.
For everybody tuning in, if you have an opportunity to go to a show, get your tickets, get a copy of this. Run with the Bull.
Run with the Bull, 3 generations of sports and entertainment, written by Eric Johnston, Greg Oliver, and Joe Casharo, available on Amazon. And if you want to come see me anywhere, I'm about to do 75 shows across Canada. It is ericjohnstonwho.com and also Eric Johnston Who on Instagram. And that's my pitch at the end.
Let's get it done. We couldn't be here with all the listeners. Like, share, support. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Dave.